Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another Coffee and Christ on a Sunday morning. And happy Father's Day. I need that coffee this morning, please. So we're on schedule, and that schedule included doing an episode on Father's Day here. Not expecting a big turnout as far as viewers. I suspect most dads are doing stuff with their families, but we were thinking about it, and we decided it might be interesting to get into what fatherhood and, more importantly, true patriarchy is. Not so much what you see on social media. It's often talked about in a negative or even flat out derogatory fashion, patriarchy. But throughout history, and particularly what we find in the Bible, were stories of men who, yes, made mistakes, but led their households and their families. So this Father's Day, it seemed like a good opportunity to have that conversation. Now, Jonathan had posted on our men's group a image that he had a printout, it looked like, of the source being the center of the image, which is the father, and then it had other terms that were around it, like encourager, provider, leader, teacher, and each of those had some biblical verses. I went ahead and compiled those specific verses, and we can kind of take them one at a time, because I do want to discuss some of them, especially with the presentation in this context with the father as the source. Good morning, Maji Chan. Thank you for lurking. I'm going to go around like a clock because it is this circular image. So I'm just going to start with, at the very top, the encourager, which was, from what I can tell from the image, Hebrews 12:5. I added 6 because of the context.
Yeah.
So Hebrews 12:5 and 6 are, you have also forgotten the exhortation addressed to you as sons. My son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord, or lose heart when reproved by him. Whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. He scourges every son he acknowledges. That's the Catholicism version of that particular set of verses. But the gist of it being is, at least from what I understand of the text, don't be upset with the Lord telling you what to do and coming down on you to do it right, because if he didn't care, he wouldn't try. What do you guys think on that one? We'll just go one by one and we'll discuss each a little bit.
Yeah, when I read that last night, it was very relevant to my current parenting, just because having an 8 and a 6-year-old, they're kind of in the stage of finding some independence and thinking that they know best. And it's like, I just want you to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. And trying to discipline them in thy way is challenging. And it's like, and they get upset because it's not their way. And it's like, no, we're doing it. I'm doing this because I love you. I want to teach you the right thing to do. So yeah, when I read that last night, I was like, spot on. Yep. And we get upset with God, right? We get upset with God, like, why God? David got upset with God, saying, why God?
Well, I think there's a little more to it also, and maybe this will spark Michael's paradox-seeking face. It's one of my favorite goals whenever we have these discussions. But in current society, it's almost considered taboo to even push against someone else's ideas. And that's literally what that is between in the instance that Jonathan gave as an example, father to son, but even just friend to friend, it's frowned upon for you to just go, I'm telling you this because I care. I know it hurts in the moment, but I'm trying to help you. And in society now, it's like, oh my God, you're not telling me I'm okay with doing the crazy thing that I just told you I want to do. How dare you? But that's part of being a man, and part of being a good man is being willing to say, bro, I don't think that's a good idea. These social cues often get Michael thinking on paradoxes, which is why
I would say that I think there are a lot of people who push back on different ideas, and the paradox that comes to mind is there's people who don't speak, they don't engage in politics and religion, they don't at all, and those are oftentimes the people that should. And there's people who are constantly debating who should not, in a sense. Everybody wants to argue about everything. So it's like the arguers need to take a break, and it's almost like the quiet souls should step into the arena. But I mean, a couple of things came to mind. I think something that I've been reflecting on is rebuke. It's that line of, it is that, along with, because a lot of people rebuke that shouldn't be rebuking. They should be following the, and it comes back to Jonathan's Posture of the Heart. I mean, that could be a book, Posture of the Heart. I mean, that is a book title right there. But rebuke, when the posture of the heart is rooted in God, is such a good thing. And I completely agree. And the prodigal son comes to mind as well, because, sometimes people just have to go through it. Sometimes people have to just fall. And knowing when to speak and when not to speak really comes from the courage to just do it, learn to make the mistakes. But, yeah, I think what was could you repeat the line again? The scourge.
Oh, sure. So it's Hebrews 12 verses 5 and 6. You have also forgotten the exhortation addressed to you as sons. And this is direct quoting. My son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord or lose heart when reproved by him. For whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. He scourges every son he acknowledges.
And how does God scourge? I mean, I'll speak on how I see that. I mean, that to me, in my view, is when my conscience eats at me, when I've done wrong, and I reflect on the things I've done wrong. And, I've reflected on shame a lot, because there's humility. There's an element, a piece of humiliation. Hey, I did the wrong thing. It's humiliating. Look at me. I did the wrong thing, and look at my past and all that. And when you look at that, I look at both a shameful society and push back on this. I've just been reflecting on it because it ties into the paradox. A shameful society is not good, and a shameless society is not good. And I think there's an element of shame that could be a good thing when needed, but it's wholly inconsistent with, forgiveness and all these other things, which I'm sure we'll get into, that are on the list. But it's a good starting point to reprove and to rebuke.
Yes, I'm with you on that. I will push a little bit, but I'm going to do so by trying to suss it out myself a little bit. So bear with me here for a moment. To be shameless, to be without shame, would be in our world, because our world is designed around fallibility. To be shameless would be to not acknowledge any fallibility whatsoever within oneself. is it's literally the way the word works. You're shameless. You are without shame. To be shameful, by its root definition, would be to be full of shame. So you are constantly aware of your own fallibility because you have failed, you have made mistakes. We still attribute the concept of mistakes to death. Like the one you do one thing wrong, you're done, you're flagged, you're banned from the premises. That's not how that works. We are mistake driven. We make mistakes in order to get better, because in our world, there is no way for us to be wise without being stupid first. There is no way for us to be strong without finding where the things we cannot lift and then working towards being able to move them. So there's no such thing as a literal sense of having no shame. And the people who believe that, that's cope. That's a breakdown of their mind. If that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's the paradox, because we're all fallen, but all of our sins are wiped clean. And to hold both of those, I often think of a heart of gold.
Mm-hmm.
When you say someone has a heart of gold, I don't think, and push back, I don't know. I'm just shooting from the hip here. I mean, I don't think anybody can have a heart of gold without meeting this place. Those two thoughts, because it's painful. It's like those two thoughts are, I'm a sinner. I mean, you take the Jesus prayer,
mm-hmm.
right? The Jesus prayer in one hand, and you really, but as we had a discussion on it previously about that, can very quickly become self-sabotage and self-deprecation. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. It's a victim mindset. That's a piece of the equation, and it's a necessary piece because it humbles you. It keeps you, from going around finger wagging everyone. But the other piece is just as important, that our sins are wiped clean. We are made new. We are called to be born again and to follow Christ. So I think those who I've met in my life, who I would say have a heart of gold, understand both of those.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to me, that's that middle way. I don't know if you can hear the plane, but rebuke. The Father to me is both of those things. And that's why I made a series on my channel too of the spirit of the Father. Look at all these, and I always bring up Lion King,
Mm-hmm.
and to touch on what you said earlier, right? To me, Mufasa is that patriarch.
Mm-hmm.
He rebukes Simba, for example, when he goes into the place he shouldn't. You deliberately disobeyed me. And that was coming from a position of love. You shouldn't have done that, not because I'm telling you just to tell you, but because I truly love you. And you should not do that. And to the false sense of patriarchy would be Scar. Wanting to rule, wanting to be in charge. We touched on the pills, right? The red pill, I'm the alpha. I want just the piece of being in charge, but not all the other pieces that come with it, which again are painful. They're painful to the false self.
Right.
Humility is a beautiful thing. But to those who just want to be in charge, just the title, can't have it. It's not something in Satan's kingdom. Humility.
Yeah. So the word depreciate and appreciate, they are concepts of assigning value or reducing value. To appreciate something would be to appraise it, to give it a worth. To depreciate something is to take worth away from it. So when you talk of the concept of self-deprecation, what that is, in my opinion, socially, is removing the sense of I'm better than you from an equation. You depreciate yourself in conversation in order to promote the equality between you and the other person that you're having the conversation with. And that would be an act of, as you said, humility. I acknowledge I am not perfect, and I'm going to show you by, in conversation, lowering the value that you've attributed to me, because you don't control that value. Other people control that value, how they perceive you. If you go into a conversation with somebody that you revere, like, even to the worst example, celebrity, what they call being starstruck, you get in front of somebody you've seen in movies and TV, and you're like, they're so cool, I don't know what to say. When that celebrity self-deprecates, they're showing you that they're not better than you. They're decreasing your perceptive value of them by explaining in conversation that they are not of any higher status than you are. And similarly, in certain ways, not in the overt ways that we're used to, even Jesus did that in conversations that he had. And one of the quotes that we'll be going over shows that really well. He would depreciate in conversation with people who regarded him as the great, God made flesh. When people were like, you are the Almighty, he was like, I'm just a guy. And this is why,
Yeah, that's my mind goes right to Gladiator. With all where he's asked to be, I'd like you to be emperor. With all my heart, no. And he says that's why it must be you. Love that.
Yep, exactly. Let's get over to our next one, which is the provider. Now, this one's very simple. I actually found not a lot to think about with this one. It comes directly from the prayer, which is Matthew 6:11, give us today our daily bread. The provider. What that prayer is asking God to give us the nutrition that we require spiritually to continue to exist. And it's the same thing that your children would expect you to do. Make sure that their bellies are full so that they don't die. Starvation is a bad thing. It makes you sick. It makes you weak. It makes you incapable of doing what you need to do. From a spiritual sense, the prayer is asking God to fill us with strength of spirit so that we may do the things that we need to do as he's instructed us, but it applies to all things. That one's pretty straightforward. The third one was leader, and that is Matthew 3:17. And that's one that I forgot to actually put in my doc. I am a crazy person, apparently. Let's get to it. Here it is. Matthew 3:17, and a voice came from the heaven saying, this is my beloved son with whom I am well pleased. Very important part of being a leader is appreciating the people who do the things you ask of them. Whether it be your family or your friends, if you're the leader of a group, You appreciate when they do the things you ask them to do. You appreciate when they do things that you didn't ask them to do but are useful to the group. But in our specific context, having the capacity to acknowledge the worth of someone else is a great trait of leadership. It's in every single book on it. You ask somebody to do something, they do it well, you thank them. You show gratitude.
Well, not only that, a good leader is capable of not only saying, hey, great job, but also identifying an individual's strength and then leaning into it. That's one thing. So a real father will allow their children to lean into those strengths, even if it's not something that they necessarily like. We have so many fathers, parents really, but fathers, since we're talking about that today, that will try to live vicariously through their children.
That's true.
That is not good leadership. You might be leading them, but you're leading them down the path that you wish your life became, versus saying, man, you are a strong piano player. I have no idea about piano playing, but let's lean into it. Like, you love it, like, let's do it. I wish it was a guitar, but that's okay. Let's do the piano thing. Like, lean into your children's strengths. Like, it's a simple thing.
Very good point. There's also a certain sense of wisdom in that you may not identify the thing that a person can do, but you give them the opportunity to find a way to shine, to find that thing that they're good at by making events and incidents that they can work into. It may not work, but you're there to support them. That's the good part of patriarchy. It always has been. You know, you imagine historically most of people's daily routines was centered around farming in order to make sure they had enough food. Well, how does a child learn to grow things? They can watch their father plant the seeds and wait, water the garden and wait, and then harvest the garden and start the whole process over again. But they can also participate. That's what advice is, guidance. This is how you place the seed in the soil for the best result. You can place it this other way, but it might not grow as well.
And you said it, he watched his father.
Mm-hmm.
His father wasn't nagging at him.
No.
While sitting on the couch.
Do it now instead of me.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. We're doing this 40-day challenge right now, and there was a quote in there by Charles Kettering. Every father should remember that one day his son will follow his example, not his advice.
Yep.
And that is key. If we're sitting on the couch and we do absolutely nothing, we don't take out the trash, we don't do the dishes, we don't do any of these things, and we're just barking orders, is that the man that we want our children to grow? Is that the man that we want our sons to grow up to be? Is that the man that we want our daughters to marry? Like, that's the thought that, especially now, like having a little girl, and Daniel, like this thought probably popped into your head many a times while raising up your little one. Not little anymore, but she's still your little one.
Always.
Right. And am I being the man that I want my sons to grow up to be? Am I being the man that I want my daughter to marry? And like, it just, every single time, and I'm human, I forget that thought, from time to time, but every single time I come back to it, I recalibrate. Every single time.
Yep. But it always starts with you.
Yeah.
In order to be a role model of any kind, you have to, and here's where a weird dovetail with the first conversation comes into play. You have to understand your own value and accept your value and your lack of value in certain areas in order to be a proper role model. I know I can't do this. I don't know how. I will go learn, but in the moment, this is not something that I'm capable of doing. I need to find someone who can do it right now, and then I'll learn how to do it. So when this comes up later, it's never going to be an issue again, versus just go do it. Not acknowledging that there's something that you can't do, but just foisting it off on someone else to hide your own inability. A role model, which was traditionally the patriarch of the family, is the one who has learned. If you can imagine, the start of the family creates the farm. He's cultivated the garden. He passes his wisdom, his knowledge onto his son. And when he's no longer capable of running the farm becomes the property of the son, and the son follows the modeling example of his father to keep it going. And then he makes alterations based on what he knows. That generational wisdom starts to trickle. And eventually, each further iteration of the patriarch of the family has made the whole of the family's ecosystem better. You know, we've mentioned before leaving things better than when we got there. That's literally where that comes from. But every now and then you'll come across somebody who has not figured out their own value and does the coping thing, which is, well, you know how to do it, you go do it.
Yeah, that's where I think fellowship comes in. And one of the challenges that we're doing day 13 and 14 in Jerry's Men of Grit Into the Wilderness book was evaluating. So essentially brain dumping all of your thoughts. I'm not good. I'm good at this, everything. And then that can take time. I mean, that, it's a 1-day challenge in there, but that can be a process you do for a month. It should be something that's ongoing, but brain dumping, Daniel's very familiar with that. And something that I'm,
everyone.
Yeah. And something that I'm doing more. But out of all these thoughts that you're dumping, then you put it into these 3 categories. What is true that I like? What is true that I don't like? And what is not true? And in order to have those 3, you need to have a basis of what is true and what is not true. And that's what we try to do here, is that there is a true way, and taking, your inadequacies and your strengths, to your point, and, working on it. I have heard, kind of curious what, to not go too far off topic, but what do you guys think about, because I've heard people say you got to lean into your strengths, and then people say the opposite. I mean, maybe both are true, but people say go into your weaknesses.
Yes.
What would you say is, I don't want to say stronger, or are they both true, or, double down on your strengths or go into your weaknesses?
It's simple. Both are true.
Yeah.
Like, everyone tries to create these false dichotomies, and it's like, you lean into your strengths, but in your weaknesses, God is strong, because and I thank God for the strength that He gave me, but I also am aware of my weaknesses, where I really need to lean on Him. I lean on Him in my strengths as well, but I really lean on Him in my weakness, which we've talked about my weaknesses on the Saturday calls.
Yeah. All of our weaknesses.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so they're kind of the 2 parts of a whole, but I get where people are coming from with that. I just think it's a misinterpretation of the system. You need to acknowledge what you're capable of, and you need to acknowledge what you're not capable of. But people, generally speaking, this doesn't mean everyone, but the most of humanity, we can acknowledge that we're lazy by nature. If we didn't have to do it, we wouldn't do it. So the mindset of, go into your weaknesses is acknowledge the things you're not good at and then try to get good at them as a way of growing. That's where becoming wise comes from. Because if you're not good at something, you're going to make mistakes. And when you make mistakes, you learn. But if you're good at something, you're not going to make mistakes, so you're not really learning anything about it. So I do think it's good and kind of important to go into your weaknesses and also acknowledge what your strengths are. People, unfortunately, do have this weird thing about polar opposition where they'll do one or the other. I'm really good at this, so that's all that I do. I don't ever want to fail. I want to be perfect. I'm never going to try to do anything that I don't know I'm good at. Versus the other people who are like, I suck at everything, so what's the freaking point?
Yeah.
But that's human nature, unfortunately. And it's partly instinct driven, safe or unsafe. So what it all comes back to is where I'm standing safe or not safe. If it's not safe, I don't want to go there.
Conservation of the species.
Yep. Bill says, case in point on laziness, meal prep. I don't like cooking. I started meal prepping because I got tired of cooking throughout the week.
Yeah.
Yes. Because the alternative is not eating and or eating junk food and getting fat.
Yeah, routines are so important. That's brought up a couple times in this challenge we're doing. And it's something that I haven't really dove into, and I've heard a couple of lectures on it. What's that?
I am very good at routines, perhaps too good at routines. I get routines.
Correct. Well, and that's where your strength becomes a weakness, right? Because when, like with your current situation right now, your routine got thrown off and your brain went, "Da!"
Yep. No. Go back to the way it was supposed to be.
So adaptability.
Yes.
Which humans, we are the ultimate adaptation machines if we allow ourselves to be.
Yes.
God gave us that power, every single one of us. But when we get thrown off kilter, we need to contain the chaos.
Yeah, and a routine is basically a pattern of behavior engineered towards success. I know that doing things this way means that my day will not be disrupted. And therefore, my life is not disrupted. But if things don't fall into that pattern, then we're like, well, it's disrupted. Everything is chaos, and we're all going to die.
And I suck, and I'm going to suck because my routine's thrown off.
Yep.
Well, I think there's a level of internal negotiation as well with it. I remember Jordan Peterson talking about it. It's like, lay out your damn day, you can do whatever you want, and I think if you're someone who struggles with whatever it is, laziness or too much of this or too much of that, there's just something cliche it is so powerful. These small steps, if you're someone, for example, watching and, hey, I agree with what Michael and Daniel and Jonathan are saying, and I don't go to church, or I don't do, it's not going to happen overnight. And like I put in a post yesterday, in the same way that I've fell into complacency and laziness and sin, I didn't do so overnight. I didn't just say, I'm gonna screw it all up overnight. And when you live in that pattern for so long, as I have, and God pulls on your heart, there's this kind of radical change lie, at least for me. I'm going to change it all overnight. And that can be the case for some people. You get into an accident and you hear these stories that come up. But for most, again, it's these small changes. It's, if you don't, God is speaking to you and you want to start prayer 5 minutes every morning, right? I mean, that's, what's the math on that? That's 35 minutes more than you did the previous week, and then you see how it is. Like, it's not even, it's 5 minutes, and there's something that Jordan Peterson said about timelines, right? If you're in pain, shorten that. If I can just get through this, make the next week amazing. All right, you screwed up on day 4. Make the next day amazing, and it's those small changes that really help. It's you can even, you can get a little crazy. The routine, I do hear that point. It can be a prison too, but it doesn't have to be. And I think Jonathan nailed the adaptability part. Set up your own prison, but however you want it, and then grow on it, adapt it. Because I do hear the point. You can say, I'm going to do this at this time and this and that time. And then it becomes, it's like, it's almost you experiment, you try it out, you have fun with it, Yeah.
Yeah. And if you need to blow out a wall in your prison, just make sure it's not load bearing, first and foremost, and that load bearing wall is God, centered around God. But expand the routine.
Yeah, we as humans have the profound capacity to make heaven hell and hell heaven. To ourselves, not to everyone else, to ourselves. And what I mean by that is just your mindset. That's what we're talking about here. But the I guess the expectation throughout time is that you, as head of household, the father of your children, etc., have gone through these things before they go through them. You have walked this path. You've seen the pitfalls. You've tripped over the rocks. You've fallen down and gotten up and proceeded further on the road. And now they're following behind you. So you can say, look, there's a rock. I fell over that rock. Pay attention. Don't fall over that rock too. That's good leadership. And moving into our fourth item here, the teacher, which was Proverbs 4, verses 1 through 4. Those are, hear, O children of father's instruction, be attentive that you may gain understanding. Yes, excellent advice I give you. My teachings do not forsake. When I was my father's child, tender, the darling of my mother, he taught me and said to me, let your heart hold fast my words, keep my commands and live. It's exactly what we were just talking about. I have done the things wrong. Here's how I've done the things wrong. You can do them not wrong. Just listen to what I am saying to you.
And I can't remember, is Proverbs 22:6, is that on another point, or is...
No.
Okay. So train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart in it, or depart from it.
Yep.
Like, that's another key parenting verse that I go to often. It's
I have a recurring X post that basically paraphrases that concept, which is, if you're not teaching your children how to do all the things better than you learned how to do them, then you're doing it wrong.
And sometimes the kid is going to need a trip over the rock you just told them about, to Michael's point.
True.
He told me not to go over this way, but there's the rock. Damn it, he's right.
You can teach. Yeah, you can teach. It doesn't mean they're going to follow, but it doesn't also mean you shouldn't be teaching it.
Exactly.
Right. here's another example of that. The whole purpose of my business, Whimsyland, was because I said, I finally want to do what I've always known I should be doing, which is tell stories. I'm going to write books. And then I went to the internet and tried to search how to write books and found confusing, conflicting information and couldn't find anybody to ask questions to. So I could find no one to guide me. The information was there, so the map was laid out, but there was no one to guide me and say, okay, if you take this path up this way and go over here, you'll reach a better result than if you go all the way around and come back to it. So I, after years of doing this, went, I'm going to be the thing that I couldn't find. I'm going to share knowledge. I'm going to teach people how to do the stuff that I screwed up and learned how to do, which is exactly what we're talking about here. Yes, some of your children are absolutely going to look at the rock that you point at and go right for it. But consider how it felt in that moment when you tripped over that particular rock and there was nobody there to help you get back up. You can help your child, if they choose to trip over that same rock you told them not to, recover from it. So that it doesn't affect them in the same way that it affected you. That's the glory of being a father. And that is what God is to all of us who are Christians. He is always there going, okay, yeah, I told you not to, but you did. Now let's get back up. You're okay. Dust you off. Keep moving.
Fall 7 times. Keep getting up.
Yep. Which, once again, slides right into our next example of fatherhood as the source, the protector, which is Matthew 9 through 13. Now, this one I found interesting. I think if I sat down and really thought about it, I could probably find a better way of exemplifying this concept, but I'm curious what you guys think of this. So Matthew 9, verse 9 through 13 is, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the customs post, and he said to him, follow me. And Matthew got up and followed him. And while he was at a table in his house, many tax collectors and sinners came and sat with Jesus and his disciples. The Pharisees saw this and said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? And he heard this and said, those who are well do not need a physician, but the sick do. Go and learn the meaning of the words. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. This isn't really a direct example of being a protector. It's sort of an esoteric one. In that he's directly going to the people who need him the most to provide protection, instead of just protecting the people that are within his circle. So he's reaching out of the circle to bring more people within that protection. And really the reason I call it esoteric is because that's true protection. You're not interested in just defending your own things. You're looking to defend all the people around you if they need it. In Jesus's case, everybody needed it, but in human capacity, it's an understanding of if they need it. You know, like the examples of, say, you know, sometimes you see those videos on your feeds of like thieves that roll up on somebody and accost them, and some random person comes running down the street and beats the piss out of the thief. to get them to go away. Now, that person down the street didn't have to get themselves involved. They could have just watched and let it happen, but they chose to defend a stranger. That is the true context of being a protector. It's not just about protecting yourself and your assets, because the Bible tells us to love our neighbors. If you truly love something, you will protect it.
Yeah, or the woman who is going to be stoned.
Exactly.
It's a great example. I mean, because it's wholly inconsistent without both of the pieces of the equation, which is he who was without sin cast the first stone, and go and sin no more. Because we have weaponized forgiveness in our culture. It's the overly compassionate, which ties into another discussion we said we'll touch on, which is spare the rod, without diving too deep into it.
That'll be a conversation for another day for sure.
Yeah. And without diving too deep, it's we can all agree that discipline is necessary. How that goes about, every single parent, I'm not a parent, so correct me if I'm wrong, needs discipline in the household. And the how you go about it, it's up for discussion. And many discussions are had, which is why I think it would be a good topic.
I agree.
Well, and it's not only protecting the individuals, but it's being capable of protecting. And to be capable of protecting, I'm going to take a little different spin on it.
Go ahead.
You need to be able to be physically and emotionally and spiritually strong. So that also is another caveat to the protector role as a father. Not only do we need to be able to say, protect the widows, protect the individuals that need it, be the physician for the sick. We need to have the knowledge and the capabilities of protecting.
Act like men, be strong. I remember seeing there was someone interviewing a predator. I think it was a child predator, and they were asking him who would you go after? And he was saying that it was anyone that didn't have that strong kind of person around them, right? So if they saw someone who was weak, and it's just kind of it's important, to protect the next generation. Men need to be strong, because what is it when you welcoming conflict, being ready. And I think that's the assertive approach. It's being strong and being ready for, it's another paradox too, because when you are ready for battle, not that the battles won't come, but it's almost like, I have something that I have a belief on, the being a prepper. I think everyone should be a prepper, right? There's levels for sure. I'm not saying build an underground base, but I mean, if you got the means, I think that's badass and it's cool. And I probably would if I could, but there's definitely a line to it. But I have a belief that when everybody's prepared, the preparation isn't even necessary. In other words, that if everybody was smart with the Second Amendment and had a gun and knew how to use it, was wise with it, and treated it the right way, responsibly, and everyone had a backup, food supply and, certain things in place, generators, whatever, that if shit hit the fan, which it will, it won't be as bad collectively as more people in each node in that network is able to do that. If people are responsible, you don't need, the when the world shuts down, it's like, oh, well, we're still good in this little pocket. And the more people that do that, those situations don't. But when everybody's weak and nobody's prepared, right? Then we create a society dependent on the government's going to save us and all that kind of thing. And we become a dependent victim society. So I think tied into what we're talking about, a father, I think really also, I don't know if we really encourages the responsibility. Don't do something for your child that they can do. Facilitate that. Tying the shoe, right? Don't always tie their shoe for them. Tie your own shoe. Learn to be independent, because independent, I guess what also tied into a dependent world is not a good world. It's good to be independent as a means to become interdependent, because then we can depend on each other in the right way. It's like Spartans in a war, right? It's like all those soldiers need to be able to be lone wolves, but they fight better together. Because when you have lone wolves who all come together, that to me is brotherhood. Because I'm confident all of you guys can stand on your own 2 feet, right? Like if it came to it, you guys can stand alone. And because each of us can stand alone, we make a better group together. But if you have a whole bunch of people coming together dependent on, the leader or whatever, it's like, I think it's a good thing for fathers to teach their son to be their own man, to be able to stand on their own feet, and they'll respect them and love them more for it.
Well, it is true by human nature and psychology that if you are prepared to defend yourself, the likelihood that you will have to defend yourself is decreased.
Yeah.
That's pretty obvious. And that child predator is using an example that we see in all of nature. All predator creatures.
Yep.
They specifically go after the outlier, the weakest, or the furthest separated from the group. Why? Because they know instinctively that if they get close to the group is going to take them out. If you attack something stronger than you, the likelihood of success is dramatically lower. Nature documentaries are filled with those. Now we have 2 more in our source examples. The next example is the helper, which is Psalm 10:14. That one is, but you do see, you take note of misery and sorrow. You take the matter in hand. To you, the helpless can entrust their cause. You are the defender of orphans. Similar to what we were just talking about. It's not so much that you're strong and willing to defend your own children. You should be strong and willing to defend all children within your view. If it's happening somewhere where you can't physically exert your ability to defend, there's no responsibility there. We've talked about this in previous episodes. The particular with social media, you see something awful happen to somebody that's 300,000 miles away from you and get all up in arms about it for no reason. There's nothing you can do about what's occurring that far away from you. But if something happens on your block and you see it, you damn well can intervene. But to be a true helper of others is to be aware of what's going on around you. And it's not just in the defending of the weak, it's just in acts of charity. You're walking down the street and you see one of your neighbors is about to fall off their ladder while they're trying to clear their gutter. Which is the better thing to do? Walk away and hope that they don't fall off it and die, or go over there and hold the ladder for them for a minute? To me, it would be holding the ladder. But I like the connection between each of the previous examples in that psalm ends with "You're the defender of orphans." You're the defender of those who have no defenders. Maybe they're an orphan. They don't have a father watching over them. Not in the physical sense. And in the biblical sense they do, but in the physical sense they don't.
Well, and very similar to the previous passage in Matthew, where Jesus sat down with tax collectors and sinners. Like the world, especially the Pharisees in that day, they're like, why are you doing this? Like, this is ridiculous. You should not be sitting. You need to sit down with believers. It's like, are we not called to go out and create disciples amongst all nations? It doesn't specify go out and talk to all the believers so you can have warm and fuzzies inside. No, you go out and you have those difficult conversations of like why you should believe, why Jesus is the truth, the way, the light. Like that is being a father-like figure in many people's lives that may not have it.
And it's a parable against selfishness. If Jesus was selfish, then yeah, the Pharisees would be correct. Why would I go talk to people who don't believe in my Father God? I can just talk to the people who do. They'll agree with me, echo chamber.
Mm-hmm.
But no, he specifically went out to the people who were lost and tried to help them so that they could be found. And our last one is being a friend. John 15:15. It's another interesting quote. So I no longer call you slaves because the slave does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends because I've told you everything I have heard from my Father. That one's really fascinating to me, and it's because I may not be a proponent of what's known as radical honesty anymore. I used to be, and it caused lots of conflict in my life, but I find that honesty is always the best policy. There's no reason to hide the truth from anyone. If I don't know something, I say, I don't know. If I can go find out quickly, I'll go find out quickly. But if it's well beyond my capacity, then you're going to get, sorry, no idea, man.
Yeah, it's interesting. First thing that popped in my mind was the Fifth Amendment on that.
Pleading the Fifth?
Yeah, because
the right to not self-incriminate?
Yeah. Well, a bunch of thoughts came in. Like, it's when it comes to speaking the truth, it's I've reflected on openness and honesty. Sometimes I've been too open where I'm just being too, it's like, it's unnecessary, and I think that.
How so?
Well, I got arrested when I was in high school and I told the whole story. And then I came to find out after I shouldn't have said it. I should have had my lawyer defend me, and I was foolish and said more than I should have. That's right. One thing that comes to mind. And but honesty what's that?
But you learned it's not that you were you were intentionally hiding the truth. It was that the proper procedure of the situation was to let your lawyer give them the information. Well,
I think Jordan Peterson made a good point. Like, it's like, tell the truth. And if you're not there yet, tell the truth and at least don't lie.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, and that I think is where my gut kind of comes in, because it's, you know, you start there.
Yeah.
I'd have to reflect on it a little bit more, but I think that wisdom sometimes meaning just shutting up. You know, I think also that, like, for example, if you go into the middle of a, you know, a protest, people completely disagreeing with you, you know, the truth can come in many forms, right? Like, I think you can just, you know, you don't have to, I guess maybe lecture. I don't know where I'm really going, but there's something that it's just like, sometimes you just doing an act of kindness can speak more truth than telling the truth. In other words, that, you know, there was a lot of things that my father taught me that I didn't follow, to our point before. But he showed up, you know, he was kind and he was always there. And I wasn't ready to hear certain truths. So, and I think, like, on social media, there's an element of bluntness, you know, to your point when you started out speaking about this, that it's like, there's a part of it where, again, this is more so that I've learned, like, it's like, I went through a phase where I'm like, no, it's all in on God. You got to tell everybody the truth all the time. And it's almost like you're defending the truth, where it's like Christ already made the sacrifice, and it's what, give me what you got. Like, am I hitting that chord now, or?
No, you hit it right on the head. You're trying to defend the truth. The truth doesn't need defense.
Yeah. So it's the element of pride.
Yep. That's where social media gets all screwed up.
Yeah.
To one person, we'll use a stupid, silly example. To one person, they go outside, and because maybe they're colorblind in certain perspective, like, say, they can't perceive blue very well, they say the sky's gray outside. Another person says, no, it's not, it's blue. Well, to that person, the sky is gray. That is the truth of their perception. Now, they don't necessarily need to defend that, but the pride tells us, when somebody says, no, it's not, that we got to go, yes, it is. You know, and you get into that stupid back and forth. I know you are, but what am I? And there's no need for that other than the ego. I must be right because I am speaking the truth. Well, no, the truth doesn't need you to be right for it to exist. It doesn't need your defense. You need your defense. And that's something that you should be considering about yourself. I had to figure that one out because I used to get into those arguments, and I used to instigate them a lot in my radical honesty, because I would do that. It eventually stopped being about being honest and started being about me just making sure everyone knew that I was right. It's not such a good thing, because no, I'm not always right. And then it became more difficult for me to be honest and be truthful about when I wasn't right, because I wanted to be right so bad. Bill, I know I am, but what are you? Crap, that doesn't sound right. Yes. But
this kind of dovetails into the lovely line, and this is where the paradox or dichotomy comes in, because sometimes this is a correct answer to our children, because I said so.
Yep.
And I will say that if we dive deeper, which we normally do, why did we say so? We can usually find an answer, you know, the majority of the time.
Because it's going to hurt you.
That like is the first and foremost thing. Why don't I run out in the middle of the street? Because I said so. Well, why? Because a car can hit you and you can get hurt. Like there's always a rationale, and parents that stop at the because I said so need to dive deeper into, okay, what is true about this particular situation, and how can I best convey it to my child in a way that they can understand. Getting at their level, being present with them in that moment to convey the truth so they can understand it.
That moment isn't always the right moment. I think that's the point of because I said so.
That is a beautiful point. Yes, you're right.
In the moment, there may not be time for you to go, well, Timmy, it's because if you run out of the street, you're going to get hit by a bus. It's just get out of the damn road. Why? Because I said so. And then they move out of the road, and then you can have that conversation. If you just stand there on the sidewalk while they're standing in the middle of the road and have a prolonged conversation about why that's a bad thing, the likelihood of them getting hit by something increases.
Yeah,
so
which
time for it at the moment.
And that could be established too, as far as say, when I tell you to do something, you do it, but also understand that when I tell you because I said so, you can always ask me why.
Yeah.
You know, so that's built into it, and I'll tell you why. And I want you to ask me why. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm like, ask me why. I'm like, I can almost guarantee you that Dada will have a reason for why I'm asking you to do said thing. Like there will be a why. You might not like it because it's not going to be what you want to do, but I will have a reason.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I guess in thinking, this is why I found your picture so interesting. In thinking about these things, not as separate examples, but part of the whole that is the source or the father. In order for truth to be used in its appropriate context, it should be an example of being a helper, a protector, a teacher, a leader, an encourager, or a provider. There's a reason to do so. This is why I have trouble with my radical honesty of my youth. It's because back then it was literally just because of the truth. It wasn't because it was trying to help anybody. It wasn't because I was trying to protect anyone or lead anyone to something better. I just wanted to be right. That was all ego driven. It did make me smarter and eventually wiser, but I had to make the mistake of I'm doing it for the wrong reasons in order to get there. And each of these things has a position that can be encompassed by any of the other examples. We protect to provide, to teach, to help, and to be a friend. You know, we lead to provide, to protect, to help, etc. They all work in conjunction towards that one single word, being a father, or, you know, in the old term, the patriarch. Patriarchy is not bad. Bad patriarchy is bad.
Bad anything is bad. And that's,
Indeed.
You know, let's talk about society for a second and the word of patriarchy. It has such a negative connotation on it now because individuals have come into a leadership role and been terrible leaders.
Squandered the value.
Yeah. So it depreciated the term patriarchy to where they did not lead well. They treated their people like terrible. Well, coming in as very Christian.
Yep.
Howdy.
Christian like at the very end.
Like the to be a patriarch didn't encompass any of these things. The being an encourager, being a provider, leader, teacher, protector. No, they were all self-serving. Mm-hmm. They weren't serving others. And that is just because you're a man in a leadership role doesn't make you a patriarch. To be a patriarch, you have to be these 7 things. And to boil it down to three things: provider, protector, presider. So provider, protector, leader. Like, to make it even more simple, if you are not those three things, you are not a patriarch. You are just a guy in a upper management position.
Completely fair and valid. I just got here at the end for that right there. That's good.
Happy Father's Day, Dave.
Happy
Yes.
Father's Day to y'all.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, Donald Trump.
I do think there's an like when I think of the word patriarch, it comes across as multi-generational to me.
Yes.
That's an aspect as well, like beyond just your immediate family. At least that's something that I attach to the word. I'm not sure whether you guys do or not, but
It
yeah.
does, because its original definition was he who rules a family, clan, or tribe. So it wasn't always just about family. It was about a group of people.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Like my grandma, she used to be called like a matriarch of our family, and I could see why, up until dementia and old age really started taking its toll. That was probably the more true statement. I would say my father is a patriarch of my family for sure. Certainly is.
Yeah. So in the Latin, it's I believe patri, which is essentially father, head, chief, whatever you want to call it, based on pater, which means father, and archine. I think it's archine. It might be pronounced differently, but it just means to rule.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
Essentially just means he who rules, and not in the O'Doyle rules kind of capacity,
Nah.
but he who commands.
No, that
And he
makes
commands,
sense.
and he commands from the standpoint of the foundation of God. Like, I think that's a very important part.
That's the beauty of history. That's what I find so fascinating about going back to, say, the Bible to explain concepts. Back then, it didn't need to be said that way. Patriarch didn't mean he who commands with moral foundation. It was just assumed that he who commands was going to have a moral foundation and do so from a moral foundation. Come to the term now, it's used in derogatory fashion as someone who commands without moral foundation, because our society is skewed so far over the course of time that we no longer trust each other to be moral to begin with.
Well, yeah, there was once a presumption that all of these things were done morally, or at least most of these things were done morally. It's
Or
the reason,
just with good intention.
Yeah, with a belief that most people want good for all, and not at least not only for themselves. It's the reason, like that's why I think so many of our politicians, like, they have to swear on the Bible for that reason. It's like, yeah, because without that foundation, what are we doing here? It's
Exactly.
Like that's one really interesting difference between the East and West culturally, is that we have many countries here in the West have a foundation of Christianity, and so the values align really easily. And yeah, no, I love that stuff. It's really fascinating.
Yep. It always amazes me when I think about it. Sadly, amazes me how far down we've rolled from the height. My belief that there are no truly evil people, that evil is something that a person commits to, it's not what they're born to, is,
Well, yeah.
It mirrors that high trust concept of the old world. You know, we all exist and we're all under threat. So we all should be trusting each other to watch each other's backs. That has not changed in the world, but our minds as a society have changed to the point where now we fear our own neighbors. The people who are literally watching the backs of our houses sometimes. We don't trust them anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember seeing a comedian who was talking about like how when someone will ring your doorbell, like everyone would get excited back in the day and like, oh, somebody's here. And like now it's like, who is it? And like checking the camera app and all that.
Yeah, now it's dun, 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 who the
yeah, yep.
Checking my pocket. Checking the weird object in my pocket for no discernible reason. Yeah.
And that's a shame to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's so sad. Before we close out, I feel compelled to talk about this just a little bit, so bear with me. I'm not sure how it's going to connect with the conversation we've just had, but it wants to be said. There is a fascinating aspect of Catholicism that I had not experienced in any other denomination when I was a churchgoer prior to my conversion to Catholicism, and that is that the beginning of Mass, the priest that's presiding over that Mass says, "Let us acknowledge our sins."
That's a very Catholic thing for certain. Yeah.
Super Catholic thing. I find that so intriguing because, and I guess it does connect now that I'm thinking about it a little more and it's finally been said, we were talking about truth and we were talking about honesty and assessing ourselves to find our strengths and weaknesses. Every Mass, I'm asked to think upon myself what my sins have been. So I'm reminded of my deficiencies. And then through Mass, I reconcile those deficiencies and am ultimately forgiven. And those sins are removed once again through communion so that I can leave Mass with a clean slate and try again.
Yeah. I've noticed in my own church and some of the I've attended another service for another person's church recently. More Protestant or more non-denominational. There's been a return to, not entirely, it's like not to the degree of Mass, obviously, but there's been more nods to tradition in non-traditional services. I've noticed a slow drip feed of that happening at my own church.
That's awesome.
In recent times, and I have heard what you're talking about in the beginning of service, but that was at a Lutheran church, which is ironically not too dissimilar to Catholic in the way they run their services. Ironically, considering the history there. But yeah, no, it's so funny. Growing up, it's like, why are there so many churches? And then I start reading history books, and I'm like, holy sweet, frick! All right, yeah, that's why. Got it.
Well, that's just a beautiful question to open up any service. And the way that your perspective on it and the way that you take it in, I'd be curious to know how many other people within your congregation truly look at it in such a way versus kind of just blow over it real quick, you know? But I think all four of us are on the same page with that. It's like, no, acknowledge our sins every single day. Mm-hmm. Acknowledge our sins, find our weaknesses so that we may find strength in God and that he may continue to teach us and rebuke us in the way we should go, just as a father should to their children. Absolutely. Like not in Ephesians 6:4-6. I don't know, I wrote it down somewhere. Do not provoke your child to anger, but teach them and instruct them in God's word. essentially, right? So
Yeah.
it's constantly going back to the truth, not just saying it, but living it day in and day out, being the example. Our kids spell love Time, so giving them time, being present, which, my dad worked a lot growing up, as you guys know, and that's one of the reasons why I switched my place of work. That's one of the reasons why I do many of the things I do, is so I may have time with my family, because it was such a profound impact on me. And Michael's point of saying I didn't do what my dad said, well, I do some of the things my dad said, but a lot of the things I actually do quite the opposite, because in my identity statement that I revisit frequently, it says, I'm the son of God first and foremost. My earthly mother and father are so-and-so, so-and-so. And I'm grateful for the lessons that I caught, and also the lessons that they taught me. Because it's not only in the things that we do, but also the things that we don't do that our children are learning from. Yeah. So we just kind of have to keep that in mind.
That's so interesting too, because my father once, when I was younger but still an adult, he asked me, did I spend a lot of time with you guys growing up? And I said, from my perspective, you did your best, but you would work, wasn't uncommon for you to be gone 14 hours a day. It was very common for that to be the case. So my perspective, no, I would have liked more time with you than I got. And from his perspective, it was a lot, because his dad would go and work in another city and across the United States for 4 months at a time, and that was common for him. So it is interesting how generationally that can be different in some ways. And yeah, for me, it's my father's not a perfect man, and I acknowledge that, but he's as good a man as I've ever met, truth be told, and I've met a lot of people at this point. And so for me, it was never coming to grips with, oh, he's not the hero I thought he was growing up. It was more coming to grips with, I'm not as good as I think I should be, because my father is such a great man. That was more my struggle growing up. He's such a good father, and it wasn't undue pressure. A lot of people complain about, oh, all these expectations, they ruined me. I'm like, I think you guys have it backwards. Not expectations. Is what reason is there to aspire to anything, especially as a young person? I think that's something often not acknowledged, and that's a valuable thing that a father in his proper place and proper timing should be applying to you. Growing up, he always was like, you're the oldest, you're the example. You got to take care of your siblings. You got to do the best you can. I don't care what you want to do, just do it well and do it right, and do what's righteous. Yep. Things of that nature. So, yeah.
It's interesting. My grandfather lived in a totally different state. But they visited as frequently as they could, and we visited them as frequently as we could. And in comparison to my father, who was present in the house most of the time, my grandfather's presence was more powerful than my father's presence. And the reason for that wasn't because he wasn't spending, my father wasn't spending time around me. It was the quality of his presence within that time. Most of the time he was reading, or he was in his office, or he was doing things that were specifically for him. But every time my grandfather was around, it was about me.
Because he came to visit you and your siblings.
Yes, but he could have visited and just sat on the couch and watched baseball all day. The difference isn't so much in the time as in the quality. My grandfather made the time that he spent in my presence about being in my presence and with me, doing things, being outside, building stuff, listening to my stupid stories that he had absolutely no interest in, but pretended to because it was important to me, versus my father, who was constantly present physically, but mentally was not involved in what was going on. I moved around him like he was a rock, an inanimate object. But when my grandfather was around, he was a person involved in what was going on with us. So I question if it's really about time or if it's actually about presence. Like, even if you work 14 hours a day, if the only hours that you get to spend with your children is 3 hours at the end of the day, is it that you're watching TV for 3 hours while they play on the floor, or is it you're on the floor with them for 3 hours and then they go to bed?
No, it's definitely quality time. It's that presence.
I think
it's just a cute little sentiment, okay?
No, I'm sorry. I don't mean to. I didn't
LOVEDINE, okay?
Terrible. It's wrong.
Dang it.
I didn't mean to disparage it. It just got me thinking.
I agree, though. Like, it is about that quality time, because you can have much more of an impact in 1 hour than sitting, doing nothing with your children for a whole day. It's like, where's your focus?
Right.
It's partially, I think, a love language thing, even with your children. Because, like, my youngest, he loves gifts. Like the other day, on his actual birthday, not the day we're celebrating it, but his actual birthday, I woke him up before I had to take Thorin to work with me because I don't trust him with my poor grandmother. And I gave him a giant dinosaur book with illustrations and talking about science, and he's 6. He can't even read it yet because he's just not there yet. But he looked at me and he cried. He was so happy, and I'm like, that's cool. I don't think anyone's ever appreciated it more than my son appreciates this. Nice, but it's a dinosaur book. I don't know. And for Thorin, he would be like, "Oh, cool," and then forget about it immediately. Thorin needs a lot of attention. That's what he needs, or that's what he wants anyway. And so,
makes sense.
It may come down to the child individually, and maybe that's just something I'm thinking about because my children are so different. So different.
Well, they all are, right?
No. Most are the same. Only mine are uniquely.
Of course, Christian.
Yes, that's right.
Well, we're coming up on the hour-and-a-half mark, so we can wrap this up in our usual way. Michael enjoying the sunshine in front of everybody, making people jealous.
I'm home.
Where can people find you if they want to talk?
Just you can type in my name on YouTube. You'll find me. All my links are there.
Yes. Screenshot the name. You can reach him. Jonathan, how about you?
All the socials, X, Instagram, _wellness dad. Reach out, let's chat.
You can tell he's a
Christian.
wellness dad because he has a clean shave. He's the only man left with one.
It's all half Kryptonian genetics.
Truly, I say to thee, very
There he is.
All right, Christian, make us laugh.
You can find me on the Iron Seas this coming Tuesday. We decided to make a new mother watch Quigley Down Under and not get emotional about it. So we're going to be discussing Quigley Down Under and storytelling with Alyssa Hazel this Tuesday on the Iron Seas. Anyway, what about you, Daniel?
That was a bit creepy.
You're
Like tremors.
very popular in Malaysia. Anyway, continue.
Well, success. And I am Daniel P. Riley. You can contact me through my website, whimsyland.org, or you can follow me on X at Mr. DP Riley. We have a men's group that meets every Saturday and hopefully on Wednesdays or Thursdays soon. We get more discussions going. If you would like to participate in that, reach out to any one of us to get a link to join and get involved. But I must end my coffee in Christ with the only command that really matters, and that's get thee to church. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Adios.
There it is.